The next talk that we're going to have right now is Cloud Security Metrics, presented by Xavier Ashe.
Thanks, guys. If you want some metrics, I'll give you some metrics too, but that's all right. So cloud security myths. So I like to make sure that I'm talking to the right crowd. There we go. So I want to get an idea of what you guys do so that I make sure that, I'll give you the information you need. So who here is, part of a SOC, analyst? You guys have got to respond to cloud security crap. All right, so we've got some analysts in here. All right, so engineers, people that've got to design security for the cloud. All right, good. We got it. So, all right. So that's generally where the talk is going to be aimed toward is those people. But we are going to talk. I've got some IR in the cloud and some other talks or other things about dealing with security in the cloud. So let's go ahead and get started. So a little bit about me. I'm old. I've been around for a long time, and I've most recently worked for Gartner. So if you see these terms that only Gartner uses, that's because they infected me with their terms. And so just bear with me as I use those terms as I describe some of this stuff. I've been in vendor world consulting. Did a little bit of my own business for a while, but I've recently switched gears, and after getting accepted to this talk, I now do IR. So I don't do cloud security anymore, but I do play a good one on TV. So now I do I run an incident response team for a large financial institution. So that's why I put in the IR and the cloud stuff to make sure I cover that over. All right. So what is the cloud, right? So in general, most people talk about the cloud in these three general places, right? You've got software as a service, infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service. And there's all these, that is the three types of cloud, right? And I'm here to say that there's a lot more than that. And so we want to make sure that we all understand when we say the cloud, what are we talking about? I want to make sure that everyone walks away knowing about, especially function as a service and other serverless type of things, right? So function as a service is a big, push, and for those that design security and design or work in a SOC, we generally are not the ones that are going to decide, hey, we want to go do this function as a service thing, right? That's going to be some business line, some IT architect, some developing team that says, hey, container as a service. We could let's do this new container stuff. And so as we talk about, there's these three types of cloud. Four types. Well, there's actually 5 types of cloud services. It keeps ever changing, right? So here's a couple more that backend as a service, especially if you're doing mobile. That's a popular one now. Just all that other crap that you have to do. Just all the stuff to run a mobile app is backend as a service. Integration platform as a service to be able to get data from here to there. I started off in the sales world, and if you use ITTF, that's a good example. Unified communication service for getting your voice stuff. Payments as a service. All these wonderful services that you might make sure that you cover when you design for security. So very important. All right, so everybody got it down. Everybody knows what the cloud is. We're all on the same page. It's one big thing that we can talk about easily, right? Security, cloud security is just one thing. That's what I'm trying to drive home is that there's a lot of different things here. So let's kind of talk about how doing security is changing the cloud. One of the things that I like to really put into people's mind when we talk about shifting the mindset of what cloud means. We used to have this, these designs of saying we've got this perimeter, we've got this, system bus, and we've got this, this architecture that really kind of starts with our data center. And that's not really the truth anymore, right? The truth is that the end user is the center of that hub. They're going to go out to all of these different services. And this kind of, this is a good talk, especially when, if you get into the tangent about endpoint management. A lot of big companies like to say, here's a trusted computer, right? You're a contractor. I'm going to give you a trusted computer. Therefore, I can manage that, and I can control everything you're doing. The problem is that that's not the case anymore, right? We have as the cloud kind of continues to permeate our business processes, this is going to be the perspective, and our users are going to demand being able to use whatever device they want. And so, this is just a side tangent. This is a nice change. So when we talk about cloud and really, cloud security, we got to talk about who does what. And I found this great site. It's called CISO-as-a-service, and the link here, you can just remember CISO-as-a-service and Google it and use this in your conversations. When you're talking about what, who does what when it comes to these different cloud services, and so they've updated it to include container as a service and function as a service. But you see here, traditionally, when we're talking about the data center, it is we own everything. That's kind of like good old homemade pizza, right? And we're going to move to infrastructure as a service. This is what most people think of when they think of cloud. AWS, opening up an EC2 virtual machine. You're handing over the responsibility for virtualization and hardware, but you still got the rest of the stuff to do, which is kind of like a communal kitchen. You show up, and you can just use their kitchen. But containers as a service, as we move into this paradigm of using containers, that the OS is now no longer responsibility. You're just moving around containers. That's your bring your own pizza situation. Takeaway, when you're now looking at platform as a service, you just walk up, take your pizza away. You go to a restaurant, that's your functions of the service. You're just showing up and you're going to get a pizza delivered. You just want that function. And then finally, the party, right? Software as a service. Everything, you just show up, there's just pizza there. And so this is a good way of making sure that people understand who's responsible for what. And this goes to when we talk about your cloud security controls. So also love the word hybrid. Everybody says, we get this hybrid cloud situation, right? We're going to do hybrid cloud. And this is just as easy to describe as just the cloud, right? There's only one thing of hybrid. Hybrid is cloud versus data center. Well, you've got to make sure that when somebody says the hybrid cloud, you say, well, what do you mean? Are you using the cloud as a backup place, a place to do disaster recovery? Are you doing just using it as a storage unit? What things are you actually shipping to the cloud? And do you actually have like a separate data center out in the cloud, or do you really kind of extend your data center? You've got data center 1 that's here in my office and data center 2 that's AWS, and you can't really tell the difference, right? So hybrid cloud could mean a lot of things, and we'll make sure that when you're driving home, a conversation that you're walking away and say, we know what we're talking about, and so don't just say, if somebody just says, hey, the cloud, you can dive into that, but then when they say, hey, hybrid cloud, you say, well, what do you mean by that? And so dive into that, make sure that you know. So as we change through this different mindset of what stuff is in the cloud, one of the things that we're driving toward is this serverless world, right? Basically, as we got excited about not having to run our own hardware, then we said, oh, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to run our own software, and we can just have more and more other people do things. And so, these cloud service providers have clued into this. They've said, "Oh, you want to run SQL? How about SQL as a service?" All right, well, that's great. Now I don't even have to worry. I can do auto scaling on one. I have one database, and it can just auto scale on its own, and I don't have to worry about actually creating containers or doing anything. That I just have a SQL database or an Elasticsearch, and it's just this thing that you can call, and it expands, and it is really easy to use. Problem is that without a server, there's a whole lot of things that break down when it comes down to security. As we move into the cloud, that is the biggest gap that we have. As you walk away from this talk, I want you to understand is that as we move to the serverless world, what things are not going to work. So I went around yesterday, the day before. I went to Black Hat and talked to everybody that had the word cloud on their banner, which was just about everyone, right? Everyone does cloud, right? Security in the cloud, secure your cloud, best security in the cloud. I said, well, how does your thing work? And I said, well, we do this thing, and then we install an agent. I said, oh, you install an agent, that's great. what do I do with serverless options? If I've got an Elasticsearch stack, how do you protect that? Well, exactly. So be sure to take away from this is that, understand that these serverless options are going to continue to pop up. And so as your company, as your organization moves into the cloud, it is not just going to be infrastructure as a service. Unless, you want to put these training wheels on your enterprise development and say, hey, we're not going to innovate. These services are so easy to use and really accelerate time to deliver on security or time to deliver on business processes that they're going to happen. So we, as security guys, we can't say, well, we can't put an agent on that, so you can't do that. All right, and the more we act like that, the more we're going to get kicked out of the boardroom. We have to be able to do security in the cloud and not say, here's what you can and can't do. All right, so what do I mean by security in the cloud? Well, so here is just a quick list of the NIST control family, so we can remind ourselves there's a lot of things that we, as security teams, we're responsible for, right? And so as we think back of our pizza as a service slide, right? So there's a couple of these that we can go ahead and strike off as soon as we do infrastructure as a service, right? The baseline, just put some VMs in the cloud. We no longer have to deal with personnel security, physical and environment protection, right? We would need to make sure our cloud service providers are doing those, right? If you do SOC 2, right, you have to make sure your providers are doing those. But you're handing off the responsibility. So it doesn't eliminate the need to do these, it's just somebody else is doing these. And so with both NIST and a couple of others, your cloud service providers, lots of big ones, for example, have got great spreadsheets to go through and say, here are the controls and what you do, what we do, and how to figure all that out. But generally, those really assume infrastructure as a service. And so you have to say, all right, if I'm going to have some Lambda functions out there that is going to be connecting, how do I authenticate to that? How do I make sure that that works? As that scales up and I have an incident on one of those nodes, how am I going to respond to that? All right, so another way of making sure that we understand when we say cloud security, there's really three kind of groupings that I usually say. Are we talking about like services, or cloud security as a service, security things that are happening, in the cloud, things like Proofpoint, you send your email through their cloud, right? So that's just kind of like security as a service. So that's one kind of thing when you talk about cloud security. There's cloud security products, right? So your virtual firewalls, your DLP things, like virtual appliances that you're going to be putting in your cloud. So those are products in the cloud. And then there's, for the cloud, right? And a lot of these are going to be run by the cloud service provider. You're probably going to use Azure or AWS's IAM, but there's also a third-party one of those. So make sure that when, again, we say cloud security, what are we talking about? Are we talking about, cloud security services, products in the cloud, or functions in the cloud? Now, generally, as I dive in here, I'm going to look mainly at the products in the cloud because that's where a lot of the gaps tend to happen. So let's kind of dig in here. So I did label this talk Cloud Security Myths. So here we go. Here's some good security myths. I love this. I Googled around and said, all right, so I'm going to talk about cloud security myths. What are cloud security myths? And they're all over the place. But in general, I felt like these were myths that you would talk to non-security folks about. All right, so the cloud is not secure. We can't go to the cloud. Now, as a consultant, I actually talked with a couple of companies that still, to this day, 2018, said, well, I can't trust my data in the cloud. These guys were not doing government super secret stuff. Honestly, one of them was a cigarette maker. I mean, we know how to make cigarettes. It's not secret sauce, and you're going to be okay by putting your data in the cloud. They still did not want to make that move to say, okay, we can think about maybe doing some cloud, but we're not going to put any of our classified data in there. So that's one myth. So yes, we hear all the time about data breaches in the cloud. This was found in the cloud. That's not the cloud service provider. When's the last time you heard Amazon hacked? They jumped from one AWS or instance to another, right? Or across. That doesn't happen, right? So the likelihood of that happening is really low. So the cloud is actually really secure. I love this other one. The cloud's perfectly secure. Well, no. So it is as secure as you make it. You put up data there and you leave it out in the open, somebody's going to find it, right? You load your AWS keys in your GitHub, yes, somebody's going to find it. So the cloud is only secure as you want to make it. The cloud security is too complex to maintain. This one I kind of say yes, right? And here's why. All right, so the complexity to cloud security, and this is the meat of the talk, is that all of these controls, that big list of family of controls, we've got to design all these different controls. We've got IAM, we've got data protection, we've got all these things. I've got to be able to figure out how can I convert that control to all of these different services. Right? We've got, function of service, serviceless options. How can I do that? And every week or so, somebody's going to say, okay, but now AWS has got this new thing, and it's awesome. It's going to revolutionize the thing. We're going to do it in 6 months. So security, you're going to have to get on board with how we're going to do this. And so, yes, there is a lot of complexity. It can be done, but we have to understand that, you've got to be able to communicate risk to these people. Yes, you can do that in 6 months. You can do that in 6 weeks. But you're going to do it it's going to be a much riskier situation because we're not going to have all of our controls converted for this new fandangled technology. All right. So all cloud service providers are the same. I'm going to jump to that in a minute. And then on-premise services are so much safer. I love this one because, we all know how poor our security is at our own data centers, right? So let's just not even go there. Oh my God, cloud. All right. So cloud security truths. You got to get away from this perimeter thinking. Now I am going to talk about like transient VPCs and how to set that up, and so there is going to be some aspect of building kind of a perimeter into your cloud, but it's because there's really two ways of doing there's three ways of doing things in the cloud. There is agents, there is APIs, and there is network-based stuff. And so really you got to make sure your solutions will fit one of those three. So with network-based stuff, we're going to create some transit VPCs to make sure that we can get the network traffic to go through our network products. Distributed threat surface. Think about if you're going to try to protect all of your company's data, and they start using the ERP as a service. Salesforce, there's data up there, and there's all of these different areas where now you've got to apply all these controls and be able to keep that safe. So there's a distributed threat surface. You will need new tools, or get tools make sure that the tools you've got are starting to get updated and become more cloud aware, become container aware, become more aware of what you're doing in the environment. Lots of new policies and procedures because just go back and read it and think about, all right, if I'm moving from data center to a cloud, what am I going to have to rewrite? So I already said that. It takes a long time to convert those controls. All right, so some cloud services are more equal than others, right? So this is a recent Gartner study. They looked at, took a large majority of the NIST controls and said, hey, except for IAM, we did another study on that. But is how much, if I just go with what Amazon or Google or Azure gives me out of the box, how well am I covered? And it's really interesting how there's so many gaps on the Google side, and it's I always think about like here's the perfect little cloud thing that already works for you but has fewer options, and then Google says here's just this basic platform to do some creative things, and so Google just kind of takes a different approach to it. While both Azure and AWS are trying to say I want to give you all the tools so that you don't have to go to anybody else, we have everything for you, but there are gaps there. And the gaps there, you need to be able to identify, and this is just, and this kind of simplifies the view to say, oh, well, are we just talking about EC2 VMs? Or can I have the same level of logging if I just have a virtual or a Elastic Stack? Right, so let's make sure that, as you do your own analysis here, that you understand and look at the options that your development team haven't even used yet. If they're not doing functions as a service within the next year, there's going to be a Lambda function out there doing something, and all of a sudden it's going to be mission critical. So go ahead and think about all those things and be able to do this analysis for your own company, your own situation. All right, so I wanted out of this big search. If you have a Gartner pass, you can get on and you look at the full study here. Here are some of the highlights that I thought I would call out. So Amazon GuardDuty, great product. It does have a region-specific thing. So if you guys that actually are working in the cloud using GuardDuty as your SIM, if you have multiple regions, just know it's not doing cross-region correlation. So if you do have multiple regions in AWS, you want to make sure that you're using, you either assume that risk or use another SIM to do your alerting. So that's a good takeaway. I love finding out that Google's OEM, they have it's actually semantic under the hood. They call it the Google workload protection. It's just semantic. And so if you have opinions about semantic, there you go. They're just giving you more information to do something with. So Google does not support transit VPC. So as I said, there's really three ways of doing security. It's either have an agent on a box, which we know that has a limitation. APIs, which of course has limitations because not every API gives you all the same access, or network. And so if you're going to be doing network-based stuff, and I say that you probably need to do network-based stuff from IR and instant, being able to do things on the wire, Google does not support transit VPCs. So keep that in mind as you're looking at these. And of course, there's more cloud service providers than just these, but we had to stop somewhere. So if you know anything about denial of service protection, Google's is kind of like old school. If they're going to just flood you with data, then they've got protection. However, there's a method called scrubbing. Won't get into it right now, but that's a lot of the more modern denial of service attacks are mitigated using scrubbing. That is a premium add-on for Azure and AWS, but Google does not have that at all. So again, when you think about which services to put in which cloud service provider, that might move you one way or the other. So if you're applying the WAF on AWS, that you really can only use it on those two, either on CloudFront or their load balancer. So there's other third-party products. I know F5 and a couple of others are really kind of looking to cover that gap, but the WAF has got a lot of limitations in the out-of-the-box capabilities for AWS. Azure does provide endpoint security. I think that's interesting. AWS doesn't even rebrand anything, so Azure does have that. I would encourage you to look at what's available out there for cloud-based endpoint security for those instances in which you can actually put an agent. And then Stackdriver. So both AWS and Google have, or AWS and Azure have great logging tools. A Stackdriver takes it a little bit further, and it can do some like debug level stuff, which is great if you want to also do some IR. But what I thought was interesting is that Stackdriver can be used on AWS, and so if you've got both Google and AWS, look at Stackdriver to maybe consolidate logging and get a couple more features. All right. So transit VPCs. Make sure that everybody walks away with this is a technique that is definitely, kind of required to implement a lot of the, cloud security that you see over at Red Hat. When they say, hey, we can do these wonderful things. If it is a network-based approach, you're going to need to build a transit VPC. And this just basically means that I've got to run my network traffic through a VPC to be able to get this stuff done. So this is just a basic architecture approach, but is overlooked by a lot of architects and realizing, oh, we're going to have to do this other thing. And so, especially if you're moving to the cloud, you can get this in place beforehand. If not, go talk to your network engineers and look at implementing this so you can do things like packet capture, IPS, and other things on the wire. Right. All right, so now I'll get into some of these. Like I said, this is some of the Gartner terms, so excuse me. So cloud workload protection platforms. All right, so this is a really big, long word for endpoint security in the cloud. All right, so but in a lot of these products I looked at were just the same, EDR or antivirus product. They just put the word cloud on it. So what I want to do is if you are going to look at and you should, if you don't have already, is look at these endpoint-based solutions. Here's what you need to make sure that they have. All right, so both agentless and agent-based operations. Okay, most of these are going to be agent-based to begin with, but see which ones can tap into APIs either at the hypervisor, at the cloud, and decide what type of functionality is useful, so that you can get that threat detection and protection coverage on those serverless options. All right, protection of containers. You got to make sure that even if you're not using containers today, you will be soon. So make sure that your endpoint protection is container aware. So tagging and segmenting. So I've got another slide on microsegmentation, but that being able to understand the traffic coming out of each container from a different instance, and with all the auto scaling, everything else, you need to be able to describe the data in very finite ways and make sure that if you are looking at or already doing traffic tagging and security groups, that your endpoint security solution works with those and can help. If you've already done the job of describing, here's all of my enterprise bus traffic. I built this great APS security group, and I can identify those. I've done all the microservices tagging. And then you go and install this product, and it can't see those tags, it can't work with them, so you can't really write rules to based off of that other work. So this is one is where the enterprise architects are going to be building this kind of technology in. Make sure that your security products can leverage it. So native API based integration, especially if you're multiple cloud providers, you need to look at can I integrate, have one console for both my Google and my AWS cloud. That saves a whole lot of pain and effort. So if you do have a multi-cloud integration, make sure that you can do that. And traditional antivirus, really not a big deal on servers. However, application control, whitelisting, this used to work for Bit9, so I love this stuff. But I think that's a very key feature as well. So this is your shopping list if you're going to go look for this wonderful world of cloud workload protection platforms, i.e. endpoint security. All right, next category of miraculous solutions is the CASB. All right, so who here has even tried to use CASBs out in the field? Anybody? Okay, a couple hands over here, a couple hands. All right. CASBs tend to have gotten a kind of a bad rap because I did, back when I was doing consulting, I asked her, so what about CASBs? And they're like, CASBs, they're too pain. They're for this size company. We're too big for them, or they're just too complicated. And they can be. So CASBs in general is this group of products that says I need to put something in between my user and my typically SaaS providers to do additional stuff. So when we talk about converting controls over to the serverless world, there's also all these software-as-a-service providers, and I want to do things like authentication. Well, yes, you can go and do they've got Centrify and all these others now can really help you with that. But the CASB products kind of do more than that. Allow you to do. Can add on additional encryption, can do some encapsulation, do adaptive access control. I've got a couple of features here, I've got and there's multiple architectures on the way that these work, and I've got that on my next slide. But one of the main features is, shadow IT. So you can kind of go start getting a hold of these other products. So, of course, yes, if you've got, proxy logs, your Splunk could probably figure out who's using these other, shadow IT products. So I wouldn't go, if that's your only use case, I wouldn't go out and buy a CASB just for that. But you can then start applying some of your security controls to those products in a CASB product. And so you can, like I said, apply those to your sanction SAS, and then also be able to apply those to any of the unsanctioned SAS that you come up and you can start onboarding those. But how do they work? So there's generally usually 3, 4 is there as well. So there's API mode is out of band. So basically, in some CASBs, they just say, I'm going to talk to the SaaS provider, and I'm going to tell it, it's got an API there, and they know you're coming from company X, and we're going to apply all these controls for you because we have this native integration. So this is API mode, and a lot of the big SaaS providers work with a lot of the CASBs out of the box and can apply your security controls without necessarily doing a man in the middle. The two man in the middle, there's a forward proxy mode or reverse proxy mode. Won't necessarily get into the technical differences there, but you can understand that the other way of doing this is you've got to basically put yourself in the middle and then broker those communications so that you can apply those security controls like authentication, encryption, and whatnot. And then there's enterprise integration, which is a complex word of saying that I've got all these other little products that I can tap into and provide the same CASB level services. So again, when I was going around to all these providers yesterday or vendors yesterday and asking about them. And they describe how you're doing. Oh, so you're kind of like a CASB, right? I'm like, well, I'm not really a CASB. Ours is so much different, right? So it's like, no, you're a CASB. So this is one of these product solutions that, in general, I do think that most CASBs is still a fairly new set of technologies. And if you're a large enterprise, probably not going to be able to meet all of your demands. Just about, there might be now some of the CASB products have started to put a lot more enterprise features, but this is a good mid-market program. If you've got if you've got a very small data center or no data center, and your company runs a whole lot of different SaaS products, I would look at looking at some of these to help fulfill some of your security needs. Like I said, this is one of these network-based solutions that can apply security controls for SaaS and other other cloud service technologies without necessarily having to manage the full agent. All right, so everyone's heard all about I've got this breach, people left out data over this. So this is a mandatory thing, is to make sure that you understand how you're doing ongoing cloud security posture management. Gartner used to call this Cloud Infrastructure Security Posture Assessment, CISPA, but then, the Congress decided to create a really bad law called CISPA. Now, you don't want to call things CISPA because everybody gets all fussy and says, EFF, no, not that CISPA. Yeah, okay, so we're going to call it Cloud Security Posture Management now. And so if you're only doing things in one, AWS or just Azure, each of the products do have their own checklist toolkit. However, this is one of those areas I think that defense in depth is probably warranted, right? If you're having the cloud service provider tell you that everything's okay. And in general, that might be good enough for you, but if you think that you need a little bit more, there are third-party products. There's open source. Was it CloudSploit, I think, is one of these. There's a lot of good, let's see here, right? Yeah, I wrote down to Cloud Scout 2, Prowler, Security Monkey, Cloud Custodian, and CloudSploit. So just look out there for those type of solutions, and what they'll do is look to see how you've got things set up, and constantly tell you, hey, you've got an open EC2 bucket, right? That's the kind of things we want to avoid. And so this is your security blanket. Make sure that nobody over there that has the permissions to do so does something stupid, and you can immediately respond to it. So mandatory tool in your cloud security toolkit. All right. Software-defined perimeter. Anybody know what this one is? Oh, I got one. One. All right, so software-defined perimeter. I really like this because I worked for a startup, and this is kind of what we did. We didn't call it this because we wanted to be cool. We wanted to call it microsegmentation because, NGX was talking all about microsegmentation. We're like, we could do so much better. But this is basically the type of solution that says, I'm going to put, and this, everyone that I've seen so far is agent-based. I think some may have APIs. But the idea is, I got an agent on one side, I got an agent on the other, and there's a broker in the middle. And based off of different situations, I can do different things in that with that situation. So if I've got an agent on the endpoint, I can actually stop network traffic from getting to through the IP stack based off of this broker's decision. So for example, you can do authentication before the TCP session is even established. So you can make things disappear. So that's why I call it software-defined perimeters. I can put a server on the internet, and it says I've got I'm only going to allow other endpoints that have this other agent, because I've got this third-party broker that's going to say, I'm coming in as authenticated. This IP over here, he's good to go. You can open up a TCP session for him. All these other ones, you're just going to drop the TCP session. So I think it's a really neat way of doing security. You can also do things like add encryption and encapsulation. And you can look at this for east-west traffic as well. It doesn't have to be client-server that you can do this in the data center. Again, most of this is agent-based, but it provides some really interesting security. You can make machines hide off the network. Unless you're part of this brokerage solution. So, really neat tools there. All right, about time. Microsegmentation. So, no cloud talk is good without microsegmentation. Like I said, worked in this for a couple of years. So, microsegmentation. This is my definition here because to help write a lot of this. And so it's basically saying I want to make a decision on whether traffic is allowed to flow based off of something more than just IP and port. Right, so I can say this is coming from these set of servers and it's coming from these sets of services. So I know that this data is LDAP, right? And I don't need to do protocol inspection or anything like that. I can just go ahead and say yes. I can identify this, I can tag it, and then I can link this in with my networking solution to then provide a lot of east-west control on making sure that only traffic that should go where it goes, right? So microsegmentation is being built in a lot of software-defined networking products. It's obviously available, the NGX product from VMware, and I'm seeing a lot of enterprises start to actually push out endpoint agents and start participating their entire company in doing microsegmentation. Most of so the architecture's there. Native microsegmentation is in the cloud or with VMware. Third-party model is I've got some other product that is going to come in and do it for me, and then the overlay model is the agent-based model like Illumio, and then the hybrid model is using some combination thereof, right? So in cloud, you've got microsegmentation natively, right? So if you're doing any microsegmentation in your data center, you can carry that over to the cloud, and you should, and make sure that if you're using NGX, that the tags carry over, and you can create an enterprise-wide microsegmentation scheme. A lot of people get worried about the microsegmentation. I've got I didn't put that graphic in. I've got complexity, I've got VLANs were hard, but now you're talking about microsegmentation. There you're talking about thousands of different, So a lot of people, I've seen enterprises call this macro segmentation. No, we're not going to do it this much. We're just going to simplify it, do macro segmentation. Either way, it is a very strong control that you should look at and when you're designing your networks, your cloud solutions, because when you look at the number of controls and you look at a lot of the serverless options, sometimes you're just going to have to segment that stuff off, right? I can't put an agent on it. It's encrypted traffic. I've covered my bases, so I've got authenticated connections, but I can't do anything else with it. So how can I secure that, my data layer in the cloud? So you can do some microsegmentation. Make sure that only the approved services can connect to that. And really, you have to do microsegmentation when you're talking about auto scaling and a lot of the dynamicness of the cloud. So, all right. So instant response to the cloud. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can now make, so now something bad has happened, right? So one, you have to plan for IR in the cloud. So of course, a lot of this is logging, but logging is always not enough. But when you are doing logging, I would look at things like write once storage. All right, so S3 bucket versioning is a good way of making sure that as you put your logs in, that they're immutable. And then also, index all of your SaaS services. All right, if something bad were to happen, know that we kind of laugh about, oh, those are the sales guys using Salesforce. What do they really need instant response for? Oh, I lost my contacts. I'm sorry, if you sales guys, your sales team loses a whole bunch of stuff, trust me, that's going to be a big IR situation because the sales guys, a lot of companies, the sales guys run the company, right? And so if they can't sell stuff, nobody's getting paid, so we got to go, it's a big deal. So go talk to your SaaS providers and figure out what can I get access to? How can I make sure my IR team can get in, get the data it needs, get the whatever logs, whatever different captures that I can get, plan for that stuff. And this is also where you might look at that and say, hey, I think I might want to look at CASBs now, because now with CASBs I can start doing capturing some of that network data. Right, so if I don't have net witness on every single thing, I can at least start capturing those, and so I can figure out how to respond for my software as a service providers. Note that all of your cloud service providers, they have their own IR process, and if there was a situation, if there's a data center on fire, they're gonna let you know. So if you're part of IR, part of the SOC, make sure that you've indexed all of your cloud services, you know where they are, and two, that you know what their IR program is. Now, if you're mature enough to be able to sit there and pull SOC 2 reports, that's great, but go and Microsoft and Amazon, they all have really good explanations on how their IR process. So just remember, because there's different levels of responsibility, that IR process might be kicked off by your actual cloud service provider. So just make sure you have that in your mind. So a couple of tips here. So EC2, we can actually, if you've actually got, VMs there, you can do a snapshot capture in EBS. Azure, you can actually, if you've got, IaaS OS, you can just capture the data drives directly in the portal. Margarita Shotgun, great little tool for doing memory captures, especially in the cloud. And if you're on AWS, there's this great combination of toolkits called the Open Source Incident Response Toolkit. It's got a number of different tools packaged together, and that way you could actually start up, have an IR station in your cloud, so that when you go to capture something, you can go ahead and just mount it on your IR instance, and you can go and start working away. So again, IR is not waiting until it happens to put all this together, right? So build all that out, and that in the security center, Azure's got a pretty good playbook-based system in its security center that can help a lot of the IR automations. And of course, if you got something like Demisto, whatnot, they all kind of tie into those. So again, just like with the enterprise or the endpoint security stuff, if you're doing automations like Rainbow Tables just showed us, make sure that they can connect to your cloud. So again, the takeaway here is that there is lots of different things in the cloud. There will continue to be lots of different things in the cloud, and we have lots of different security controls that we have to continue to do. It's very hard to keep up with that, and so we got to make sure that we index as much as we can, and we can communicate those gaps. And also, so that you can talk intelligently to vendors, and they say, hey, this great, beautiful thing that here's what it can do. I'm like, right, but how does it work? because that's going to tell you what kind of coverage you have. So I appreciate your time for coming out, and if anybody has any questions, I can take a few now. Otherwise, I'll be around in the back to talk a little bit further. So any questions? I answered them all. Great. Well, I appreciate you guys coming out. Have a good DEF CON.